Unities in music is the foundation of music.
All these fractured scenes can come together and unite around a common thread of being into music.
You can just tell there's so much talent in that space.
It is literally impossible to find someone within the community that isn't a nice person.
Radio has been providing a direct line of news, music and culture into people's lives for over a century. It's shifted from AM to FM, through illegal pirate stations to now licensed internet streaming. Its purpose remains unchanged, and independent community radio stations give us a vessel where counterculture and underground movements can thrive.
Radio is a form that nearly died. I think there was a point where people were like, are people really listening to radio anymore? But it's so much more than that. I now truly believe it will never die.
I woke up one day to find a note in my thing after a night out. And it had just written on this thing, it just said radio is community. I remember waking up and damn.
Independent community radio gives grassroots communities a voice to share their culture, carving out a space for local stories, sounds, and histories.
You are listening Worldwide FM.
We've been working over the last 6 months to conceptualise something that celebrates community radio and the power of community radio across the country and across the world, and with that we've invited 8 different radio stations, 7 from the UK and 1 from further afield.
Yes, voices.
Hey, hi, you're listening to LA.
Yes, now you're listening to Mondo.
Hello, you're listening to
Radio.
In a world run by digital streams and algorithm-built playlists, community radio cuts through the noise. It's as varied as the voices behind it, driven by local talent and kept alive by committed individuals. From its early roots to today's digital expansion, community radio has always been a space for broadcasters, selectors and DJs who are willing to dig deeper.
I think community radio is so important because it can be literally anything and you can engage in it on your own terms. You can meet an unbelievable amount of people through it who are both the same as you and so different to you.
Connectivity, it's a central hub for people to come and exercise their crafts and exchange ideas.
It is a completely unfiltered space to just be creative and to represent yourself, to find things that aren't being filtered through a corporate brand or a corporate platform.
Community radio can be very chill and palatable, right? But actually, where it thrives the most is when it challenges convention and when it puts on narratives and stories that won't get programmed somewhere else. When it plays music that's genuinely coming from the underground.
Community radio has deep roots in the UK. Born from the spirit of offshore pirate radio in the 1960s to the urban landmarks of London where nearly half of the UK's illegal stations transmitted from, pirate radio emerged as a radical voice, giving a platform to those ignored by mainstream media.
You had to seek out these pirate stations back then. There was no internet. It was you had to go and hunt your tribe. I remember the days of walking around my bedroom with an aerial trying to pick up whichever pirate station I could get. We're hearing this music the BBC weren't playing. It was very much, it's one-dimensional. But then these DJs didn't give a fuck about anything. We just listen to this kid, and blew people's minds. And it's still, the ethos is it's still very much there.
Community radio once thrived in the shadows, broadcasting through hidden masts and cables from basements, bedrooms and DIY stations. But in 2002, UK legislation recognised its impact, opening the door for new stations to apply for licences. We could tune into individuals across the UK, from London's vibrant cultural hubs through to the small towns of Scotland. These stations could now broadcast globally through digital platforms, giving new life to grassroots radio.
We get to connect with the global music community in a really meaningful and interconnected way through the same taste of music, but also for other reasons, through politics, through your local area, through a global kind of interest.
The ability to broadcast digitally has reshaped community stations, extending their reach far beyond local neighbourhoods to a global stage. Now listeners can tune in from anywhere, making community radio a bridge that connects cultures and stories across continents. These stations link grassroots communities in the UK with audiences worldwide, amplifying voices, music scenes and stories that might otherwise go unheard.
We represent a lot of Londoners, a lot of creative people in London, but we reach Mexico, US, Australia, but they've also done things in Barcelona, New York, Ibiza, so we're travelling globally.
Global reach is so important because of different nations having quite nationalistic viewpoints. It's so important to realise that there are people in other countries that might be experiencing similar things to you, and you can connect to each other through music or through just talking and learning.
A lot of our shows are just really representative of the voices of the community, and that's just like a huge part of radio. And why I love radio so much is that it's just storytelling of like various places in the world.
The strapline is like bringing Glasgow to the world, and there is some element of us trying to do that, like make connections to people within the city and also connect those people to other places in other parts of the world.
I just love the intimacy of radio, and right from the beginning people in United States, all parts of Europe, contacted me simply just to say they liked the music and so on. Enough to make me feel that I'm connected with a kind of a global community.
That global community vibe about it, especially when you're on email, it is a beautiful thing. Every time I travel, I somehow know so many people in different cities these days, and they're all nice.
Through friendships, partnerships and collaborations, stations celebrate unique sounds and create platforms for music scenes worldwide.
I think what's really nice about the variety of projects we're working on, which is kind of at the core of the ethos of Worldwide FM, and what we want to do with the station is supports the wider music ecosystem, and all these projects are examples of how kind of different, whether it's like an event or a radio station or a record shop, so all these cultural spaces support and work with each other to kind of create a wider music, like a healthy wider music ecosystem. In India, the sound system culture is still very underground and very prohibited in the cities. So the reason that they are taking place in the countryside or in the jungle is because they're the only spaces that they can host these dances without being shut down. That is a role that sound system culture played in the UK and why it's so important to us here. So it's nice that they've taken the role of sound system culture as a political tool and are applying it in that country too in the same way.
These connections illustrate that community radio transcends borders. Each broadcast is a bridge, bringing local sounds and stories to a global stage. But community radio's reach is about more than just geography. It creates a platform to amplify stories and experiences from voices often left unheard, bringing perspectives that foster empathy, understanding, and a collective journey of unlearning and learning together. It's not just about making sounds, it's about making space.
I think voices is incredibly important for amplifying community voices, especially in London. I would say that a lot of communities don't necessarily get heard on the scale that they should be. And I think the word amplifying is especially important in this case. I think a lot of media outlets will often speak on top of or for marginalized communities versus amplifying them. And that distinction is incredibly important to make, because we don't need people to speak on top of or for communities which they are not part of and they don't represent, right? What we need to be doing is amplifying, providing space, providing resources and tools for all communities, and especially communities which are historically underrepresented in music, in radio, and broader in society. We know this to be true for communities of colour, for disabled people, for queer people, for working class people within the industry are incredibly underrepresented and are often given the least amount of resource to actually create with and from.
One of my missions with this is to really diversify the station as much as possible, and not doing it in a way to pat myself on the back. It's like my moral compass in a way of engaging with the people that are doing stuff that don't get the time and resources for it.
It's an important focus supporting women and non-binary people because we have been marginalised for such a long time and our talents are overlooked. For me, it was really important to give these people a channel.
I'm a big fan of learning new stuff or unlearning things that you think you know. And I unlearned a lot by talking to people on Radio AlHara, and I learned a lot by the same route. I've committed myself now, tattooed this on my arm.
For those involved in community radio, broadcasting is a chance to connect worlds, sharing personal and cultural struggles that resonate universally.
And it's difficult to bring yourself to sometimes think, does it matter? Does it change anything? But again, when Edna Martinez, who's a DJ, decided to do a sonic liberation from Colombia, they weren't talking just about, Palestinian issues. It was just talking about their own, local qualms and problems with their government. We have people doing stuff from Australia, and it's like, they're Palestinian, but it's also about Aboriginal rights. We had another one from South Africa. It's a medium to put this across somehow. It amplified a message. I think people found solace in that.
But building and sustaining these spaces takes resilience, with stations constantly navigating financial pressures and logistical challenges.
Community radio can be draining. It's a passion project, to say the least.
We never had a sort of period of time of just normalcy. It was just, we've constantly adapted, and we can't afford to do it, but we can't afford not to either.
We've never had a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out, quite frankly. It's grown very organically. We couldn't have done it any more organic. We would have tried really without funding. It's just slowly built. And we find ourselves here, 10th birthday next April.
Funding for community radio is often limited or inconsistent, and many feel left behind by those in power. Support from government and industry is rare, and stations frequently rely on small donations or even personal sacrifices to stay on air.
We decided from the beginning was not to charge people for doing their shows, but that means that every month is a struggle trying to find ways. We have started a Patreon, which has been quite helpful, and trying to encourage people to donate, but we're not very good at doing that either.
We could really do with support from the government and things like that, but we don't seem to be in the right place for that right now in terms of the government that's ever in power.
Funding just goes missing for things like this. It's nuts. And then the council try and come up with these cultural schemes that feel like they haven't, there's been no sort of inquiry into people at our level that actually help to input into the culture of the city.
For many, it's more than just radio. It's a way to push back against a media world focused on profit, showing what people can achieve together with limited resources.
The idea that you can self-organise and bring people together, there's something quite something quite radical and quite political about it, I think.
We are in an era of effectively robot algorithms deciding what your listening habits should be, deciding what the next music is that you should care about, and getting that experience from a real person who you connect with on a personal level, who's the radio presenter, I think is so important, maybe more now than it ever has been.
I think we're lacking a lot of those DIY spaces. They're coming back because people are now realising that we've lost them in many ways over the past few decades.
Community radio is a medium that enables us to have autonomy over building the music industry that we want to see. It's a place where young broadcasters can find their footing, where rising musicians find opportunities, and where music fans can receive recommendations directly from grassroots tastemakers.
Our mission is to live in a world where every young person has the opportunity to fulfill their potential.
Once you turn 18, you kind of are left in the dust.
The courses that we run at Reform Radio are a really wide range, from introductions to radio, podcasting, video podcasting. It's not what we set out to do, but it's what we've needed to do to make sure we're providing the support for the young people to come through this door.
I think just seeing people and seeing how much they grow, but then also seeing how much appreciation they have for what they're doing, and then being a long part of their journeys, it's actually just really wholesome, and it's the best thing about the job.
You need to nurture the talent coming through the ranks, and there's plenty of it here.
A big thing for us, a frustrating thing as well, was kind of losing people to bigger cities that often opportunities in creative jobs that maybe were lacking in Bristol. We kind of wanted to create something that would retain people or just offer skills that could kind of bounce them on to the next step.
I didn't know how to DJ when I got here. I walked into the studio, saw the mixer and was like, I need help right now. It's so overwhelming. And I think London in general can be very overwhelming. And moving up here with no sort of friends in music and no sort of contacts was really hard. So coming to a community like Voices and a station like Voices was instrumental into getting those first gigs, and even just asking people for advice and what to charge for your first DJ set or things like that I'd never really known about or discussed with other friends who aren't in music was so helpful. This year at We Out Here, I interviewed one of my absolute idols, Mr. Louis Vega, which was so sick, and he was such a legend. It kind of, in a cheesy way, made me realise how far Voices and also my career has come, because we're bumping into people that we've met through Voices or through the industry, and it just felt really nice and wholesome that, like, yeah, you're doing the right thing, you're all here together.
Everyone had their different genres or, you know, their different ways of doing it, but it's still radio at the end of the day.
My musical life, which takes up a lot of my life, depends on the people that are running these sorts of stations, because this is my people, this is my crowd, this is where I've met a lot of my main influences, where I've come into and sat in the same room as people who I absolutely adore, you know.
Whether in the studio or on the festival stage, community radio gives people a chance to shine, to connect, and to be part of something greater than themselves. It's where journeys begin and where the next generation of creators find their voice.
Having this space is like this space in the centre of Manchester where young people can come, and we have kind of got an open door policy, like people can kind of just wander in when they want.
Like a Radio AlHara, they're experimenting and seeing what works, and people are going along with it because it's like, yeah, this is great and we want to support you in what you're doing. And I think it's the same with Worldwide FM. It's just a space to truly connect with each other through this do-it-yourself approach.
Community radio is archiving a moment in history. They are giving people a platform to archive the history of music.
It's a place for music lovers, it's a place for connoisseurs, it's a place for diggers and all the alike to just come and share what they do.
In every broadcast, community radio is archiving a moment in history, one that reflects our diverse, shared experiences. And as long as there are stories to tell, community radio will continue to thrive, connecting us all.
Just a really nice way to bring people together, and I think there's not a lot of that anymore. I think that a station is so much more than just what you hear through the radio or through your phone. It really is a community space. It brings people together.
It's just such a safe space to get out of it what you want and do your thing and be really creative. There's no kind of restrictions or limitations here. You can just do your thing and turn up with your USB or your records and have a blast.
There's so many different scenes around the UK doing so many different things, and it's great to be able to kind of tune in to different cities, and listen to what's going on there.
I feel like radio acts as a microcosm of a lot of different sound communities. You get genuinely every single type of genre or style of presenting, way of talking, way of interacting with sound, whether that's music, whether that's talk, whether that's experimental soundscapes or field recordings, whatever it is. Radio, I think, acts as the best narrative space. So you connect that together. You get to really know what it is that has drawn someone to that, why they hold it so deeply, the ways that it's made them laugh, cry, just connect and feel bigger than themselves is, I think, really beautiful.
I feel I've found a kind of tribe of people who have the same kind of eclectic, very widely spread interest that I have in music. So yeah, it's a kind of a mini dream come true.
And it's just sick, you know?
Foundation FM,
Radio AlHara,
1BTN.FM,
Mondo Radio,
Worldwide FM,
Reform Radio,
Voices Radio,
Noods Radio,
Fago,